In honor of the new Star Wars movie coming out, I decided that I was going to do a fan drawing for Star Wars. The character I decided to draw was Boba Fett. I know that Boba Fett isn't in The Force Awakens, but I really enjoy the character Boba Fett. Now on to the sketch. I decided to make his eyes slightly. This will kind of give him that droopy eye. Make sure that you draw the iris the same size though. Moving on to the mouth. If you're going to make his eyes droopy, you're going to want his mouth to kind of reflect that kind of self-confident attitude. So instead of drawing a full-on smile, I kind of drew a half smile. His lips are slightly parted. This gives him that self-confident look which I was going for. While you're drawing, do not be afraid of using your eraser. I know I've said this several times, but I cannot emphasize it enough. Now comes the very exciting part, sketching Boba Fett's armor. When drawing armor, it is important to remember that armor stands off the body. In order to create this effect, draw where his body would typically be, and then slightly above it, you draw where the armor is. This will prevent Boba Fett from looking like a puny man in armor. Working from reference photos, I used a straight edge in order to provide nice crisp lines to detail his armor and provide the iconic Boba Fett armor effect. Do not be afraid to work from reference photos. Reference photos are very important in order to create a good effect. After all, it is difficult to remember every last detail. While drawing, you should also be selective on which details to provide. You want to provide enough detail so that you know who the character is, but not so much that the picture appears overly busy. Don't worry, I did not forget his helmet, which is tucked securely under his arm. After you have completed your sketch, it is time to move on to a part which I both love and hate, the inking process. This part is the most stressful because it is when you can make the most mistakes. However, it can be really fun because this is also when you see the manga effect come through. In order to achieve maximum manga effect, you want to create nice smooth lines. This is done by not picking up your pen as you're going through a stroke. If the worst should happen and you do make a mistake, don't panic. Mistakes can be corrected using white gel pen or white paint. You can also create accessories to cover up your mistakes. For instance, I messed up Boba Fett's ear and I added an ear cuff. For inking Boba Fett, I also made sure that I used my straight edge, just like I did while sketching the armor. This made sure that all the nice clean lines which I created during the sketching process remain nice and crisp. However, while using your straight edge, you might also want to make sure that you don't go over the line. As you can see, I was using my straight edge and got distracted where it was, and I messed up one of the lines. Luckily, I was able to correct this in the final product by using my white gel pen and kind of whiting out the area. Once you have finished inking, go through and erase your pencil sketch. Now I'm going to move on to the shading process. I always like to start by filling in the face and the flesh tones. This is because I like to be able to hide my mistakes under the hair, so if I get too high up while shading under the hairline, I can hide that with the hair color. So I apply a lighter flesh tone first, and then I apply the darker shadows. make sure that when you're applying the shadows, you remember under the nose and on the eyes, because that will ensure that your face has a nice three-dimensional look. Oh, and don't forget underneath the lip. That's an easy one to forget. Moving on to the eyes. The eyes, I think, are one of the most important parts of the picture. It helps to set the mood and create a sense of realism in a drawing, even in a manga drawing. In order to create eyes, I like to use 3 colors. These 3 colors allow for a certain amount of depth. I use a really light color, and then I use a mid-tone, and then I use a dark tone to create shadows where your eyelid will cast shadows on your eye. Quick tip for drawing hair, I like to use my brush tip and draw towards the shine, and when I do that, I like to kind of flick my wrist, which will provide a nice feathery look to indicate individual hairs. Now it's time to move on to the most exciting part of this drawing, and that's the armor. As you can see, I am trying out all my green colors to find out which of the colors create that distinctive Boba Fett armor look. I decided on my darkest green and my second darkest green. As you're laying down marker color, remember that you need to work quickly. If you don't, it will provide streaks, which provides a very strange effect. Also, remember where your shadows are. His chin casts a shadow on his chest. Therefore, I had to apply a nice dark green shadow for that. Also, as you can see, my greens are going out. Therefore, what I did was I worked in an area and then I capped off my green and moved on to my dark green and used my dark green. And then I would open my light green back up and use it again. This allows you to stretch your markers which are going out. This step can take a while, so just remember to be patient and have fun. After all, drawing is fun. When working on his helmet, remember that his helmet is slightly spherical. This means that the shine spots will also have a circular pattern. While doing some of my research on the character Boba Fett and looking over some of the reference photos, I saw that he had a patch on his shoulder pad. In order to create a patch which did not look like it was standing off of his shoulder, I did not line it with inking pens. Instead, I slightly outlined it with my colored pen before coloring in the external areas. I then shaded his shoulder pads so that they looked like they curved around his body slightly instead of being just sheets which stood out from his arm. So as you can see, my workstation gets really cluttered as I work on my drawings. A quick tip for shading white areas. In order to prevent the white from looking too grungy, I used my lightest grays first. I used the light grays to lay down a framework for where everything's going to be shaded. I then added the darker as I saw fit. The darkest I used was my 60% cool gray. This prevented his shirt from looking too grungy, but then again, he's a mercenary. It wouldn't be too bad if his shirt looked a little on the dirty side. To apply a subtle indication of folds on a sleeve, I used my lightest gray to provide slight shading where the folds of his sleeve would lie. So finally, it is time to apply detailing. I freehanded in the character on his patch, and then I went through and using my white gel pen, I put a shine on his helmet. I used my white gel pen and then before it dried, I smudged it out so it wouldn't be a hard shine. It would instead have a nice soft sheen. I then went through and applied a nice background so that he wouldn't blend into the background and would stand out nicely. Also, what I forgot to film was the final shading on his hair. Thank you for watching. Please don't forget to thumbs up my video and subscribe. See you next time.